Hey folks, Rich here, South Florida Beekeeping with Rich, and today I want to talk about wax moths. Uh, in the past, if you watched my videos carefully, you would have seen me pulling out the sliding boards from the screen bottoms and taking them over to a bucket with soapy water in it and scraping everything else in it. And it occurred to me that while I've made reference to why I do that, I've really never gone into any detail, and I really should. So the other day, I was doing exactly that, and I realized that, oh, wait a minute, I really ought to do a video on this. So instead of dumping the detritus, like you see here, into the bucket with soapy water, I scooped it all into this container, and we're going to dump that container out onto this nice white piece of paper here, and we're going to start looking at wax moths. Now, you'll hear tell we have greater and lesser wax moths. I don't know that I've ever seen a greater wax moth. What I see in my hives is the lesser wax moth. The greater wax moths, when they fold their wings, they're boat keel shaped or roof shaped when the wings fold. When the lesser wax moth folds its wings, they're kind of delta V shaped. They're flat on top, and it kind of makes a delta V. And those are what I tend to see when I pull this out, and there'll be 2 or 3 mature ones on here. Uh, and the lesser wax moth likes this kind of detritus better. The reason there is so much of this little wax capping on here right now is that hive number 2, where this came from, actually has supers on it that stayed over the winter because they were very active, and they're getting them cleaned up and prepped and putting nectar into them right now. So this is them cleaning them up. So, they're kind of tidying the edges of things. And if you look over here, if I'm not mistaken, I pulled this one out a minute ago. I'm thinking this stuff is feeling like see the webs in there? Now, this is only 4 days since I cleaned this stuff out. And you can see the webs in there. And if you look right there, you'll see, I'll make him wiggle. There we go. Can you see him in there?
Is it a larva?
That is a larva. So, a wax moth, the males produce a pheromone that attracts the females. Once mated, a female can lay between 2 and 400 or 3 and 500 eggs, depending upon which species they are. 2 and 400, I think, for the lesser. The eggs are really tiny, and when I dump this out, we're going to look at a bunch of egg casings. Okay, they hatch out. Okay, I'm not going to go into this whole. They can hatch out in 3 to 5 days, or as much as 30 days. All these things are temperature dependent. It's February the 14th. Happy Valentine's Day at the moment, and the temperature out here is over 80 degrees. So I think we can dismiss the things work slower in cold weather aspect of this. Just always assume that things are happening at full speed. Yeah, that was fun. So, and like I say, the eggs hatch in 3 to 5 days, and the newly hatched larvae start going through all this detritus and eating pollen and bits of wax and everything else. And one thing you need to be aware of is that those larvae, when we dump these out, and you're going to look at all these little larvae in here, they are capable of traveling more than 50 meters. Okay, they can crawl out and go over to the next hive and then to the next hive and whatever. They have been recorded as trapped by scientists doing this stuff. They have been recorded as traveling more than 50 meters, 150, more than 150 feet. All right, half the length of a football field, however you want to put it. They can travel. Maybe not as far as small hive beetle larvae can travel, but they can travel quite a bit. So at any rate, I want to dump these out and do this. And the reason I'm making all this point is that if you keep your trays in, and you go out every 10 days or so, and you clean your trays off into a bucket of soapy water to kill them. If you pull your trays out and you just go shh, 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 there, the stuff's out in the ground, it's in the sun, they'll probably die. No, they don't shrivel up and die. They can scoot 50 yards to get into shade and to crawl back up into another hive or the same hive. Okay? I think this is the point that we're missing. We pull out these trays, they just kind of scrape them out on the ground, and all you're doing is spreading it some. But now let's have some fun. Oh, yeah. So, boom, there's a few moths that have literally finished their life cycle.
You just let a few out.
I can't help that, but that's what that moth trap is lit for right there, dear.
Oh, that one right there? Okay.
Yeah. Look at that. This has only been in here a couple of days, and their webbing has already got this thing into a solid mass.
Ew, ew, ew. Look at all the larvae.
Yeah.
They kind of look like maggots to me.
They are maggots, dear. That's what a larvae is a maggot. So, let's just break this apart. Here you can see larvae of all different sizes. There's a really tiny one right there. There's some bigger ones. So
what do they eat?
They eat these wax capping bits. They eat pollen. They love pollen.
Do they carry diseases?
No.
So the reason for getting rid of them is because they make a mess out of the comb.
Yes, the reason for getting rid of them is that they burrow into the comb and they leave webbing behind. And the bees can't do anything about that webbing. If there is a bee larvae in a cell and the wax moth kind of like bumps up against it, kind of goes around and keeps going this way, that little bit of webbing he left behind can tangle the back feet of the bee, and the bee can't get out of the cell.
So they're disruptive to the hive.
They're very destructive to the hive.
Okay.
Now, okay, there we go. There's some of the eggs. So if you want to take a look at some of the eggs, these are
Which ones are eggs? The white things?
The white things.
Those are eggs or egg casings?
They're egg casings. The eggs, these are probably mostly all hatched. I mean, there could be a live one. I can pitch one of these. Yeah, that one feels healthy. No, it was dry. But if it was healthy, it would squish under my fingers. If it's dry, it just crushes. But either way, clusters and clusters of the eggs. But if you dump these out on the ground, you're not solving anything. You're simply spreading the problem around. And solution ain't dilution ain't the solution to pollution in this case.
So they should dump them into a bucket of soapy
water.
They
should be dumped into a bucket of soapy water, or they should be given to some hungry chickens, or they should be thrown in a fire.
Yeah, we don't have chickens.
We don't have chickens.
I wish we did have chickens, so we'd have eggs.
No, probably somebody be coming around to take our chickens away, saying that we're the problem because we help spread the disease or something. So,
yeah,
any excuse they can to keep us dependent, but whatever. So, there you have your eggs. There you see larvae of all these different sizes. These larvae, as I said, can travel up to 50 yards.
And they're wiggling around.
Yeah, and these have been in here for about 4 days because there wasn't anything I could do about making this video before now. So, and as I say, this was cleaned off, scraped very clean just 4 days ago, and this is the amount of detritus the bees have dumped down here. And as you saw, let's just pull this sucker out, shall we? Teasing, teasing, teasing. We'll get it to come out.
Ew.
Okay. So there's the larvae. He's, pretty fair size at this point. Now in the divots, when this larvae gets to be full size, what he wants to do, or she or whatever wants to do, is to dig a canoe-shaped divot in the woodenware. That's a great reason for using plastic bottom boards. They want to dig a U-shaped divot, and sometimes they get carried away and they can literally they can burrow a hole all the way through. That is 3/4 of an inch of wood. Okay, but usually they dig out the divot, then they spin a cocoon around themselves, and then they hatch out as an adult moth, and they go out looking to reproduce and keep the cycle going. But for those, and when you say, oh, well, wax moths aren't the problem, they're simply an indicator that there is a problem, that's true in the middle of summer. But as you go into winter down here, the bees numbers reduce. But this is South Florida, so the bees, we never stop laying, but the bees reduce the amount of laying. The bee structure shrinks. We'll go from 16 or 17 active combs down to 5 or 6, which is why I can't stress enough that as your bees begin that reduction in November, you need to keep an eye on it. And by the time December 1st comes, you probably need to be pulling all that comb, which is now cleaned out and dry, and pop it in the freezer.
So you'll have it when you need it in
So
the
that you'll
spring.
have it when you come back, because otherwise you have a perfectly healthy colony over here that's the size it should be and doing what it's doing, but over here there's only 1 or 2 or 3 bees patrolling the comb, and that gives the wax moths plenty of time to enter it. Now, I want to go over one more thing about wax moths. Just keep it in mind. I don't have a solution for you, but just keep it in mind. Remember, wax moths like to find cracks and crevices in the woodenware to lay their eggs. Well, when you use a screened bottom board, that crack or crevice is in here a lot. When I pull one of these boards out, those white casings are usually right along the edge here. And just because I pulled that out, that doesn't mean I got them all. I know there's not a lot you can do in here to keep that clean, but you can take a stick and stick a nail through the end of it, and you can do a little bit of scraping in here. I mean, you can't go every time you do a hive inspection. But the bottom line here is I'm suggesting to you that every 2 weeks, every 14 days, remember it's a 20-day life cycle here, between the time that egg hatches into a larvae and that larvae begins to pupate is roughly 19 to 20 days. So if every 14 days at maximum, 10 days would be better, but if at least every 14 days you went in and you pulled your bottom tray out and you scraped it thoroughly into a bucket of soapy water, you could do a tremendous amount to reduce the number of wax moths that are going to be flying around in your apiary. It's not a perfect solution, but it's the best one. It's a very satisfying one. Die, sucker, die. And for that scraping, I don't like the plastic so much, and I mean, it's okay to use your hive tool, but really you can go to the dollar store and you can get a nice metal paint scraper, nice and thin, and they do a great job of cleaning up the boards. I mean, that's all that was used to clean these up. Okay, so that's about it. I brought this out just in case we needed it, but you got a pretty good bead on those, didn't you? Come on. Yeah.
Time to say goodbye.
I guess it's time to say goodbye. I'm going to have some fun, but this has been Rich, South Florida Beekeeping with Rich. Be sure to like and subscribe and share the video with your friends so that we can spread the word about how different beekeeping is here in South Florida. Bye-bye.